changing, we're flying high, creating a complaint-free world.
Anyway, I want to welcome you to this new series that I'm doing, Complaint-Free Parenting. How to raise great kids and enjoy the process. If you're a parent, how would you like some of that? Raise your hand, please. Great. For those of you who are watching online, I want to explain why I'm sitting like I'm sitting. We are actually recording here in Kansas City at Sangha Yoga Church, which we do every Sunday. Now, we just finished 45 minutes of yoga, and everyone is sitting on their mats. And if I was standing over them, it would be a little uncomfortable. So I like to be down here at everybody's level. So that's why we're here. Now, next week will be 10 years since I handed out the first complaint-free bracelets. How about that? 10 years. 10 years. Over 11 million bracelets, 106 countries. We still continue to send out 100,000 or more every year. Half of those are going to countries that I can't even pronounce. And I have no idea why this continues, other than the fact that it seems to have really struck a chord with people. And the thing that people have asked me about since the very first day is, when are you going to do something on parenting? Now, that was 10 years ago. And at that time, I had a 10-year-old. There's an old saying, a man, I forget who it was G.K. Chesterton, I think, said, you know, before I was a parent, I had a dozen theories on raising children. He says, now I have 5 children and no theories. So, what I have had during this 10-year time frame is not only to develop my relationship and my experience as a father over the last 10 years with my daughter, but I also have been blessed to invite 2 other children into my life. I now have a stepdaughter and a stepson, as most of you know. My daughter's name is Leah. She calls me Dad. My stepdaughter's name is Star. She calls me Will Dad. And my stepson's name is Ian. And he calls me Sup Dude. Every time I see him, that's all he says. Sup, dude. What I have seen over the years is that parenting is one of those things that most of us think we're born with, like a navel. And that we're just going to be good parents. Even if our parents were deplorable parents, and statistically they were, we still think that somehow, without any additional knowledge on our part or any additional exposure, are going to somehow be great parents. And then there's that day, if we are parents, when we turn to our child and our mother's voice comes out of our mouth. Perfectly. And we even know it's crazy that we're doing it, but it's literally, there's an old saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If all you have is your parents' upbringing of you and you have not studied parenting, then you're bound to repeat the things that your parents did. What I discovered at a very young age, I was 15 years old. I was on my first job, and I was working for the S&S cafeteria in Columbia, South Carolina. My job was to run the beverage station, giving everybody their coffee, their tea, etc. Now, when I ran out of something, I had to run back to the big storage area. And the man who ran the storage area, no one liked, because he was hard to work with. You know why he was hard to work with? He was deaf, and he was mute. And so when you went to tell him something, you'd have to write it down, and then you'd have to explain, and it was this back and forth. And so many people complained about it. I instead went home and picked up the World Book and looked up deafness. And lo and behold, there was the alphabet. And within a day, I could communicate with him. Anyone else could have done that. And then all of a sudden, he loved it when I came to work. What I'm telling you is that that little fix that I discovered to work with that man works for everything in our lives. There is not a problem you are having or have had that someone hasn't already had and written a book about it. The problem is you're not reading the books, and yet they're there. I have an Audible account. I download 20 to 30 audiobooks a year and listen to them in addition to the ones I'm reading. So what I want to tell you, both my friends here and my friends watching online, is I'm going to give you the best of everything I've learned on parenting over the next 6 weeks. Now, you may have grown children. This is still going to help you. You may not have children. This is still going to help you because you're going to understand your own parents and you're going to be a better parent and a better person as a result of this. But understand that parenting is something you should study. For crying out loud, everybody goes, it's the most important job in the world. Mother. Where did you learn to be a mother? From my mother. How was your relationship with your mother? Terrible. What I've discovered is that over the years, now understand, Star and Ian have only come into my life in the last 6 years. So 20 years I've been with Leah. What I've discovered was that when my wife was expecting, there were books. I read What to Expect for Fathers. When she was born, I read books on how to raise a toddler, how to raise a baby. Consider doing the same thing. And if you're not, at least search out ideas on YouTube. It's amazing what people will put on YouTube to help you. I call that the greater nerd theory. Have you ever noticed if you get online with customer service, with the technical support, your nerd's trying to help you, and then all of a sudden, you know what, I got to turn you over to a greater nerd here. There's always a nerd who knows more. The thing is, do you know more? And commit to knowing more. So the first thing I want to talk about, because I consider this absolutely vital, is what is the role of a parent? I was listening to a TED Talk the other day, and they were talking about why we have children. And there's all these different reasons. Companionship. I mean, there's even a belief that that the biological drive to have children is just a way so that our DNA continues on. And that all the warm, fuzzy feelings and everything is just a way so that we make sure that happens. I think that people have children for all kinds of reasons. And the reason doesn't really matter. I'm one of those strange men who, when I was 15, wanted to be a father. Not then. Not then. I didn't become a father till I was in my 30s. But I knew I wanted to be a father. And I think I wanted to be a father so I could see if I could figure it out. So if I could take the mess that was my childhood and do something and help another generation. So our reasons for having children really don't matter. They're as diverse as we are. But I think we only have one role as a parent. I think we all have one role, one goal. And that goal is to what?
Raise healthy, fully functioning adults.
That was underwhelming. Let's try that again, everybody. 1, 2, 3. To raise healthy, fully functioning what? Adults. 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 That's our big challenge, I find, as parents. We're always like, oh my God, how do I deal with the terrible twos or the toilet training or whatever it is at that point? And we're not thinking long term. I'm not saying that we have to push our children along. But one of the greatest pieces of advice I ever got as a father, when my daughter was 3 years old, there was a girl who lived about a block away who came over to take care of Leah for us while we were at work sometimes. And she was 16. And this was the sharpest young woman I have ever met. And she was how old? 16. She was extremely mature, but you could also tell she was girlish and fun and everything. So one afternoon, I went over and knocked on her dad's door, and I said, I'd like to ask you a question about your daughter. Yeah, he gave me a real weird look. But I said, my question is, and I know this sounds crazy. Now, this is in Aner, South Carolina, way out in the country. And I said, would you mind if I asked you a question? Could you tell me how you raised such a mature, smart, loving, friendly young lady? And he said, no, I don't think I can. And I went, okay. But then he said, as I'm leaving, I'm turning to leave, and he goes, you know, maybe I can give you one piece of advice. And I said, what's that? He said, her mama and I never baby talked her. We always talked to her like we thought she could understand. No matter what it was, we talked to her like she could understand. Wow. It's amazing what your children will understand when you take the time to explain. And I get that's a difficult thing sometimes. When you've got exploded diaper here and dog barking there and this issue going on. And yet, if you can look a child in the eye and explain, then the child may often surprise you and do exactly what you asked. So we need to treat our children it's totally okay to dress your children up as little kids, you know, with the little top knot for the little girl and all this, and make them cute and let them have fun. The thing is, when you relate to them, don't talk down to them. Talk to them like they should get it, and they'll get it. I wanted to begin this series by sharing with you the 2 worst pieces of parental advice my parents gave me. Let me tell you a little bit about my parents, because I think that that's an important thing to understand. My mother was raised in South Carolina, in the South. She was one of 4 daughters. They were all debutantes. Whenever my grandfather walked into the room, the girls had to stand up. Now take that in for just a second. Think of your own home. Every time the husband walks through the den, the living room, the kitchen, the girls had to stand up. Every time. They did not have a good, close relationship with their father or their mother. My mother, if you want to see sort of the family I kind of lived in, go back and watch The Help, the movie. 1960s, all white, African American people working for us. And that's what my mother was raised with. Then there was my father. My father was a severely abused child. My grandfather was convicted of murder and sent into prison. He got out of prison because he seduced the guard's wife. True story. My grandfather was an angry, abusive, mean was the word that everybody described Speck. Everybody called him Mr. Speck because he got glasses, and one of his kids said, "Look at Mr. Spectacles," and it stuck, and they called him Speck. But he was just a mean, angry man. So if we know our role as a parent is to raise healthy, fully functioning adults, what I like to think of us as parents is like this. Think of a coffee filter, and another coffee filter, and another coffee filter, and another coffee filter. And way up at the top is my great-great-grandfather. And he's got a lot of issues and a lot of problems and a lot of anger and a lot of challenges. And through his life, he then passes that on down to my great-grandfather. Notice how it gets a little less bold in the arrow there that I drew? He then passes it on down to my grandfather, who passes it on to my dad, who passes it on to me. Now, what I'm showing you in this is an ideal situation. Sometimes there's a hole in the damn filter. Wouldn't you agree? And it all just comes tumbling right down, generation, boom, right on top of you. And you know what that means? It's still yours to clean up. It is still your mess. Your parents, grandparents did the best they could with the resources they had. It is still your job to set an intention to be the best coffee filter you can be. Not only for your own children, but so that the anger and the mistreatment of your family of origin doesn't come out sideways with your friends and the people you work with. This was my life for so many years. The worst piece of advice as a parent my mother ever gave me was this. Here we go. Don't do as I do. Do as I say do. Have you heard that before? Yes. Don't do as I do. Do as I say do. What? To paraphrase Ralph Waldo Emerson, what you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying. My mother for many years tried to convince me not to smoke cigarettes, with cigarettes hanging out of her mouth. My mother always told me, well, if you're going to smoke, don't hide it. You'll have to smoke here with us in the family, with the family. So at the age of, you ready for this? 13, wow. I smoked a pack a day in the living room with my family. We all did. My older brother smoked a pipe, my parents both smoked cigarettes, and my younger brother wheezed from all the smoke. My mother tried so hard to tell me not to be this way, not to be this way, not to be this way. The subconscious mind does not understand the reverse of an idea. You cannot say no, not, nor, neither, none. When you say don't be this way, you hear be this way. My mother struggled with her weight her entire life. She then blessed me with that same issue for many decades because she struggled. And friends, this is the beauty of becoming a parent. Because if you look around and don't like your kids, they're you. They're you. They're a reflection of your parenting. And it is never, ever too late to change it. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Just understand that your children will model you because they have nothing else to go with. They're going to take what they see you do and they're going to try and apply it. And so instantly when you become a parent, or if you haven't realized it yet, it's a call to be a better person, right? Raise your hand. Do you get that? It's a call to be a better person. You all of a sudden have to be the adult. But the question is, are you being the best adult you can be? And if you are, you got great kids. So many people come up to me after I do speeches on the complaint-free world, and they'll grab their kids and they'll pull them up and they'll go, I wish you could write a thing on complaint-free parenting, which is exactly what I'm doing right here. But do you hear the energy that they're dragging the child up with? Instead of saying, this is my little Tom, he enjoyed what you had to say. Wouldn't you like to say something to the man? Would you please help me get my kid quiet? What you are speaks so loudly, your children can't hear a word you say. Focus on being the best you can be. That's the worst piece of advice my mother gave me. You know what the worst piece of advice my father ever gave me? It was his own take on being a father. And I can remember him telling me this at a very, very young age. My father said, "I'm not a good father." Many of you know that I was raised in a home with a lot of money, but not much love. My dad was always working. And I can remember one night, I was probably 6 years old. I was wearing blue flannel pajamas, sky blue flannel pajamas, and I waited up to hear my dad come in that night. And he was wearing a green top coat with a hat like they used to wear on Perry Mason, you know? And when my dad walked by my room, I opened the door and I had my piggy bank and I asked him to open his hands. And I dumped my piggy bank into his hands. And he said, "What's that for?" And I said, "Well, Daddy, you say you have to work so much to make money for us. This way you won't have to work so much. And you can be with us." He took the piggy bank, poured the money back in, handed it to me and said, "I'm not a good father." And if my father has said that to me once, he said it 50 times. And even that night at 6 years old, I thought, you can be. You can be. And as I got older, I thought, that's an excuse for not trying. I want to read you something in just a moment to close with, but what I want you to get is no matter what kind of a parent you've had, you can be a great one. I'm a great dad. Didn't always used to be. Got my nose bloodied and my knees skinned a lot along the way, read a lot of books. But my kids love me and I love my kids and I accept where they are and they accept me. My good friend Yakov said, when your kids are little, you're their manager. And if you do a good job when you get older, they'll hire you back as a consultant. That's where I am. I'm a consultant. So I want to end this first lesson that we're doing by reading something that I found when my daughter was born, and I framed this and I put it over her crib, and I read this every night after I put her to sleep. It was written by Jack Clark and Chris Groninger in 1991. I don't know who they are. I don't have their permission to read it, but I'm hoping you'll love it so much you'll look them up and support them somehow. So this is titled, What Your Child Might Say. Treat me as a person of short stature who simply has less experience than you. Let me laugh and play, for all too soon I'll be your size. Spend time in my universe with all its wonders, for I often have trouble understanding the priorities of yours. I, like you, am bored with idle conversation, so talk about meaningful things to me. Speak with me, not at me, and use clear language. Please don't pretend I'm not there when you're talking. Set examples with significant actions, not shallow words. Provide me with a definite yes or no, and then stick to it. Tell me why, and I might surprise both of us by minding you. Be honest, for I can spot a phony right away. The truth works a lot better than manipulation or guilt trips. Furnish me with guidelines, then I won't be testing the rules. Let me manage important parts of my life as soon as I'm able. Grant me privacy and time to myself, but still hug me often. Teach me living skills and encourage my creative side. Nurture the fantasies that are very real to me. Give me time with older people, for they have learned much and are themselves returning to childhood. I love that. Honor all my feelings, as they are neither right nor wrong. Show me that grief is normal when I lose something. Love me for who I am, not what you want me to be. Recognize my value to you, because I am a beautiful being, even when I make the errors that are called experience. Let me know that you are not God, that you make mistakes too. And finally, seek my opinion. I have wisdom in many matters. Being a great parent is about getting out of your own way. It's about giving up what you've been told is the way to interact with a child, and instead interact with a human being right there who's just small. I think this is a wonderful thing to remind us with children as well as with adults. And over the next 5 weeks, we're going to be taking this a lot deeper and looking at how we can truly raise healthy, fully functioning adults.
No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more. There's no more complaining. People are changing. A complaint-free world. No more complaining.